Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're having a good day. Today we're going to quickly replant our wheat field before we head off to explore the world a little bit, because I think it's probably time to check out what else is around us, plan out potentially where we could go caving for some more resources since we pretty much exhausted the cave we saw in the last episode, and maybe even think about locations we want to start our first real base, because while this is a really nice hole in the wall and we could expand the base inside this hillside to cover a little bit more ground, I feel like I want to build somewhere a little bit more open, a little bit more on the surface and exposed, and maybe not in a gully like this, especially if this doesn't necessarily lead to any more caving prospects or anything more exciting. I don't always like being stuck in the middle of a forest. I want to go exploring. So today, we're going to step outside of our front door, especially now we've got all of our iron tools and kit on us. We don't need to worry too much about zombie noises in the walls, and let's step out into the world and see what else is out here. I'm going to start by walking towards the coast over here, because we're actually fairly close to the coast as it curves around here from our spawn point. And the land over here stretches off into the distance, meaning that across this ocean, there could be some interesting lands for us to explore. We've got the boat on us. We could give that a look a little bit later. I also wanted to wander back towards our spawn point because we didn't really spend a great deal of time looking around last time we were there. We just sort of picked a direction and ran off once we'd got our first tools together. So our spawn point was actually more or less here on this beach. Remember, we've got some pumpkins around here. I think the leaves of the trees that we plucked have finished decaying now, and pretty much over here was where we spawned. So I kind of wonder what's over here in the other direction. The coastline continues. We've got a nice wide ocean over here which we can explore, and it looks like we have a couple of things over here worth investigating. First and foremost, we have a lovely little colony of turtles over here, who we will get probably a little familiar with later on. We have some sugarcane growing here on the shoreline, which we're going to harvest at least some of so that we can bring it back to our base, because sugarcane is a wonderful thing to grow. But excitingly, we have a little reward for our exploration here. There is a shipwreck beached here in the center of this biome, more or less, so I think we should dig this out and see if we find any interesting loot inside. One of the great things about a fresh Minecraft world is all the secrets it has in store for the player to discover, and there are lots of abandoned and ruined structures in the world for you to discover and loot, and maybe even come up with a story for why they're there in the first place. And in this case, shipwrecks potentially have loot chests inside of them. We're going to hop down in here, but we're going to pay close attention to the oxygen meter that appears above our hunger bar, and we need to make sure that we aren't spending too long down here in case we start to drown. So I'm going to try and dig out as much of the blocks in here as possible from the surface. I'm also paying attention to whether or not it is day or night time, although now we have ourselves a little bit of iron armor, I don't think we're going to have too much trouble dealing with any hostile mobs. We've uncovered one of the chests, so we can open this up to find that it has a little bit of gunpowder for us, some poisonous potatoes, which are no good to us whatsoever, and 3 blocks of moss. Now, moss is a resource that we will find generating naturally in the world as of Minecraft 1.18. It should appear in lush cave biomes underneath the surface, but in the meantime, if we wanted to do anything with moss, that is a pretty useful find. We won't really be able to do anything with it without a source of bone meal, which we could use to grow it artificially, but it's still really nice to have a little bit of moss from this shipwreck nice and early. Having just broken my stone shovel, I figured we would use up the rest of that. I'm going to make myself a couple more sticks. We're going to craft an iron shovel with the iron ingots that I brought with me, and that should mean we can mine these out a little bit faster. And this is what I was looking for right here. If the shipwreck generates with a door like this, it actually kind of acts as a bit of a buffer for the water, so the water will actually not enter the same block space as the door, meaning that we can use it as an air pocket to dig out the rest of the shipwreck. And towards the back here, if the shipwreck generated with one, we might find another loot chest. Unfortunately, in this case, it looks like the shipwreck hasn't generated with one. There is normally a chest here in this spot of the back cabin, but it looks like the shipwreck doesn't have one, so we don't get any easy loot from this one. Maybe we could dig around and see if there's anything else, but I think we have reached the limit of what the shipwreck is going to give us. Now, the moon is rising over here, so this will probably be the first night we have spent on the surface, but I think it's going to be worth spending a little bit of time out here so that we can do some more exploring and maybe encounter a few hostile mobs and get ourselves some mob loot. Like, there's a zombie spawning over there. There should be a couple of spiders and creepers and things like that coming out as the night continues to darken. We might even be able to get enough string to make a bow, which is one of the last things kind of missing from our set of tools, or at least the preferred set of tools I have for my hotbar. Over here in the night, we can see some bees that have come from beehives in the nearby forest. There is a little bit more sugarcane and a beautiful range of birch hills over there. There's a really nice sweeping bit of landscape over there, and I wonder if we clear cut that, if we could end up doing something really cool over there. I'm sort of wondering where some of it leads. I'm going to explore through this forest a little bit more, paying a bit of attention to where we are and a bit of attention to what's around me, because the skeletons will come out, and at this point, now we have a shield, we should be able to block any arrows they fire at us, and we get an advancement for the first time doing that. The skeletons have dropped some arrows and some bones, but we don't have a bow quite yet, so we can't really fire the arrows back at them. The majority of this area does seem to be birch forests, doesn't it? We've kind of set up on the border between a birch forest and a regular oak and birch mixed forest. We've got a sweeping range of birch over here as well, and that hill ends maybe in a kind of valley with some of these hills opposite. It's difficult to tell at this stage, but there's certainly a few opportunities around here for some cool stuff. Let's hop down, let's use the river to navigate a little bit and see where the river will take us. If you get stuck out in your world at night and you're less confident with combat, it's actually relatively safe to explore by boat, because you won't get too many hostile mobs in rivers. They might spawn occasionally on the banks of the rivers and try and make their way towards you. Skeletons might fire arrows at you from the riverbanks, but for the most part, you're not going to really encounter any hostile mobs coming from the river itself. You might get the occasional drowned, which are the watery version of zombies. You'll often find them out in larger oceans or spawning on riverbeds, but in Java Edition, they don't tend to bother players all that much. In Bedrock Edition, I believe they spawned in much greater quantities, although that may even have changed with the advent of 1.18. Exploring a little further afield, we see a couple of overhangs in the terrain here, and these are quite common now. The slices that get carved out of the terrain like this can often lead down to caving opportunities, but honestly, I find navigating something like this a little bit too claustrophobic. It leaves you with less room to maneuver against hostile mobs, so I prefer not to explore those unless I'm really desperate for somewhere to go caving. Something like this looks a little bit more promising and certainly does seem to lead down a fair way. You can also see some glowing light. Seems like it's coming from some glow lichen on the walls. That could be a potential thing to explore if we want to. I also noticed this glowing patch over here on the riverbank where, yes, a lava source has generated in the opposite bank of the river, and that's just flowing down into the water, causing stone to generate around the base of it. And lava won't flow any further than that. It flows about 4 blocks before it stops, and even the rain is not going to put that out. We're going to leave that well enough alone for now. I don't think it's quite time to be messing with lava in our world. Through the trees, we see a creeper who's just wandered down into that hole, apparently to meet up with a friend, and a spider over there. Let's take care of the creepers first. In the previous episode, you saw me block a creeper's explosion, but in this case, I think we're going to try and attack them head on. You'll notice the sword I'm now using has a sweep attack, so I was actually able to hit both creepers in one go there. But my general strategy for dealing with creepers, if I want to attack them head on, is to attack once, usually running towards them like that if you can, and then to turn and run away. If you can sprint away from a creeper, that is usually a good idea. Otherwise, if you deal a fast sprinting hit to them, they can be knocked back a little way, and that will allow you to retreat while still facing them and take care of them like that. So that's how I tend to attack creepers. Obviously, we can deal a little bit more damage with the axe, which should be able to kill them in 2 hits if we deal a jumping critical attack like that, but you also run the risk of slowing yourself down when you do that, so I tend to play a little bit more cautiously when it comes to fighting creepers. Monsters don't tend to avoid the rain, so we should be able to find one. Whoa, that was scary as all heck. Hello? Okay, that was an Enderman, and we won't have to deal with Enderman for a while, especially if we stay out in the weather like this, because Endermen are not fond of water. Whenever there is rainfall, they will tend to disappear. Wherever there is water, like this river, they will tend to not go there, but they teleport around to move a lot of the time, so it can be a little bit startling to see one. Alright, a spider is coming towards us. These things usually try and jump attacks, so it's fairly simple to time your attacks just based on the proximity of the spider. It sounds like that Enderman is still warping around from place to place, but we don't need to worry too much about that right now. And that is a spider jockey. Okay, this is actually a rare opportunity to see one of these in action here on, what is this, our 5th day of the world, maybe? We need to go and take this on, because a spider jockey is a skeleton riding a spider, and the skeleton is in charge of the attacking, but as you can see, it's a little bit more maneuverable than the average skeleton is, and so the skeleton-spider team-up can be a little bit difficult to take care of. Once again, though, as long as you concentrate on blocking the skeleton's arrows, the spider is not going to be too much of a hassle. Seems like the sun is rising, the day is brightening up a little bit, and so since this is just regular rainfall and not a thunderstorm, we shouldn't need to worry about too many more hostile mob spawns. We'll just take care of a few of these spiders, which look like they are dropping some string for us now. Fantastic. We'll collect that up, and I think that will be our combat done with for the moment. Oh, there's that Enderman again. It's worth noting, though, that with rainfall, the hostile mobs that would normally burn up in the sunlight, such as zombies and skeletons, will be immediately doused by the rainfall, so they won't stay on fire for very long, they won't take damage from the fire, so you might need to worry about some of the undead mobs following you around in the forest, even after the sun has come up on a rainy day. Now, we've got a couple more creepers left to deal with, but I think they should be easy pickings for us now, and we've even got a little bit of gunpowder for our efforts. That's not too bad at all. Maybe we'll continue our trip downriver from here. I don't necessarily like staying out in the rain for too long, but since it is no longer nighttime, we can't really skip the rain at this point, so it's probably best for us to just keep going on down here and seeing what's up. There are squid in the river, which can give us black dye if we want to harvest their ink, and this is an excellent find. Over here we have the beginnings of a roofed forest, or a dark oak forest. These are some very densely forested biomes. You get dark oak trees, oak and birch trees in amongst these branches, and it actually seems like a perfect place to take some shelter from the rain. So I'm going to leave the boat, quickly pick it up, and make for the coverage of the canopy, where I might be able to hear myself think over the sound of the rain, and we can start gathering some of this more interesting wood. I'll take down one of these dark oak trees. Since there are so many of them in the forest, I don't think the forest is going to miss it. Dark oak wood is going to be a richer brown color than either of the two wood types we've had access to so far. We've mostly been messing around with birch and oak. The dark oak wood, as you can see from the end texture of these logs here, is a lovely, rich, reddish brown, which can be really nice if you want to build some stuff that looks a little more luxurious. We're going to break some of the leaves of this dark oak tree in the hope that it will drop some saplings for us, and we need to make sure that we can get hold of 4 dark oak saplings, because 4 saplings are needed in order to regrow the dark oak saplings. Most of Minecraft's other trees, in fact all of the other trees, have 1 block wide trunks, or at least there is a version of each tree that can grow with a 1 block wide trunk. The dark oak tree is the only one which doesn't, and so we should probably take down the leaves of a few more of these trees, seeing as we've only got 2 saplings right now and most of the canopy here is gone. But much like the other saplings, if we can get 4 of them to take home with us and plant them nearby, we can grow these trees ourselves, and that will actually allow us to harvest more dark oak wood if we want to build with it later. There we go, just got my 4th sapling. I think a couple more have dropped over there as well, so hopefully we can start a dark oak farm, and it looks like we have a cave here that we can take shelter from the elements a little bit as well. I'm going to step into this cave actually, just so that we can get hold of a few more resources while we're out here, and I was hoping to stumble upon something like this in order to do a bit of exploration in today's episode, and it looks like we have a few mobs waiting for us in here. Yep, I hear the tiptoeing sounds of zombies behind me, and it looks like, just spotted out of the corner of my eye in the back of this cave, we actually have our first Lush Cave environment. We also have an Enderman out of the rain down here, and so I'm going to show you the best technique for dealing with an Enderman now, and that is to take advantage of the Enderman's taller height. Endermen are 3 blocks tall. As you can see, this guy is pretty big, and he won't attack me until I attack him or until I look at him directly, at which point he'll make a very scary noise and come over and attack me. Endermen hit really hard, but as long as I have a 2-block wide and 2-block deep space to walk into here, I should be able to look directly at him. There we go. He's gotten angry, and he's going to come around here, and I should be able to hit him from in here without him hitting me. Now, a lot of the time, you don't need to worry too much about Endermen. As I said, they are a neutral mob for the most part. There we go. Oh, and the thunderstorm started right as I killed that Enderman. That was very dramatic. But as I said, you won't need to worry too much about Endermen as long as you don't look at them. Killing Endermen is probably what I would consider a precautionary measure, though. If you think one is going to warp into your field of view and is potentially going to interfere with your caving session, then it might be better to take it out before it takes you out. It tends to be my philosophy when dealing with them. Anyway, with that taken care of, we can turn our attention to this cave, and there is some wonderful stuff to be had because we have encountered our first Lush Cave. I'm going to grab a little bit of the iron from the nearby walls, and we're going to step down into this cave and see what it has to offer. The first thing is moss everywhere. So the 3 blocks that we got from that shipwreck are now seeming a little bit insignificant by comparison. There is a lovely, lush, watery environment. Shelves of clay form in these lush caves, and we also find rare plants like dripleaf spawning around here, not to mention glowberries hanging from cave vines in the ceiling. So with my inventory now full of stuff, I have the rather difficult choice of choosing, do I throw some stuff out so that I can take home some of the more valuable things from this lush cave environment? Do I make a chest to store stuff and come back to it later? Or do I go back downriver to my base, stash a bunch of stuff, and then come all the way back to this area? I think I'm just going to look around a little bit and not touch anything quite yet, because exploring these lush cave environments is new to me. They were added in Minecraft 1.18, and so I'm kind of excited to see how far this one extends and what other kind of beautiful environments it has created further down into the caves. You don't just find them in large open spaces like the one we just left. As you can see, we find patches of the moss growing out into the side caves as well, and so it may be that this is just a small lush cave, or it may be it spreads a little bit further afield. I'm going to craft a few more torches, so that opens up a bit of space in my inventory that was taken up by sticks. The thunderstorm is getting very intense out there, it sounds like, so I'm quite glad that I'm down in a cave at the moment. And in terms of this cave, it seems, for the moment at least, that this is where the cave ends, or rather, this is where it becomes an aquifer, and we dive down into an area that looks like it is filled with deep slate. So it looks like we can't explore this cave much further than this, although there was a little bit of iron down there in the wall, which I might get. But look at this lovely little lush cave grotto. I find this a perfect place to shelter from the storm, and it's really nice to have some of these things around us. Up here on the ceiling, we have a spore blossom, which is the thing that's generating these green particles all around the place. There are a couple of bats that have spawned in the darker places of this cave, but that's not a problem. Bats aren't going to hurt us. They mostly just fly around making a nuisance of themselves and occasionally sleep upside down. The rest of this area, though, is populated with moss, with azalea bushes around here. There's some tall grass. What a lovely reward for exploring, though. And we've even got a little bit more iron here in the cave. Now, we're probably going to collect any of the iron that we see at this stage, because we still need to stockpile it a little bit for some other stuff that we'll need iron for a little bit later on. We might also want to bring the copper home with us, and I think we might also go for the iron that's down here in this pool at the end of the cave. So I'm going to dip down here really fast. We're just going to spend a bit of time gathering this iron, and it's slow progress when you're mining stuff underwater, which is why I'm going to return to the surface, get my crafting table out, and make some doors. As we saw in the shipwreck earlier, it's actually possible to create an air bubble underwater when a door is present, in Java Edition at least. Unfortunately, this trick does not work in Bedrock Edition because doors can be waterlogged in much the same way that other blocks can. Doors in Java Edition, though, are kind of your lifeline when it comes to dive mining like this. Whenever you want to harvest some resources from below the surface of the ocean or from a pool in a cave like this, doors are your best friend. So we got a little bit more iron out of that. We managed to get 6 more raw iron, taking us up to a total of 13, and I think I'm probably going to throw out some of the other mob drops that are in my inventory. Things like the rotten flesh, which I don't think I will have much use for right now. I think I'll probably also throw away the dirt and the diorite, since they are a little bit less valuable to me right now. We can acquire those pretty much anywhere in the world. There's a lot of diorite here, for example. As long as we know where to look, we can get those resources back. And so I'm going to spend a bit of time grabbing the resources that are unique to this Lush Cave environment and taking some of them home with me. We'll right-click on the berries that are growing from these cave vines to harvest glowberries, which we can plant on any surface we're using as a ceiling. We'll try and gather a few of those, although I don't want to darken this cave in its entirety because that increases the potential for monsters to spawn, so I think I'll just take 3 of those away with me for now. We have a little bit of moss, and we can always come back and get a bit more of that. I think I will craft some shears so that we can harvest some of the small drip leaf around this place. Small drip leaf was actually quite difficult to acquire in the last update when it was introduced, because it didn't generate naturally in worlds like this, so it's actually kind of nice to get hold of some of the small drip leaf. The big drip leaves, which are these larger flat-headed plants, are actually kind of like platforms that you can stand on for a second or two, but eventually they tilt downwards and they throw you off, and they take a moment or two to reset themselves. So if I stand on this one here, for example, I'm just going to be tilted off it after a couple of seconds, so it can be fairly dangerous to jump to these and leave yourself standing there for too long. Last of all, there are a couple of other offshoots of this cave that I do want to explore very briefly. We have this little niche back here which is filled up with clay, and potentially if we break this down it might lead somewhere else, or it might just lead to nowhere. But in the meantime, we can harvest a few of these clay balls which we can smelt back at home and turn into red bricks. On this side though, we can use a bit of the sand that we gathered earlier to jump up into this side cave and see if this goes off into the distance. Looks like we have a bit of clay generation left over from the Lush Cave, but beyond that, we just have a dead end with a little bit of copper ore in the wall. I'm definitely going to take some of the coal with me though, because we've used up a few torches just in exploring this place, and it's always worth having a little bit more coal at this stage in the game. It sounds like the storm outside has faded away, but night has fallen once again on the landscape outside, and so I'm probably going to take a note of where this is. I won't take the coordinates right away because I know it's just downriver from me, so it'll be fairly easy to come back here again if we want some more of the Lush Cave blocks, if we want to return and mine up a bit more copper, since we know where that is. But since that is all this cave has to offer, I'm going to check out the cave on the opposite side, which seemed to go down into the earth a little bit further. We have a couple of hostile mobs to take care of though. A creeper is trying to sneak up on me, and a skeleton is trying to help him out. Let's see if we can take out the creeper. Yes, there we go. We can block with the shield to deal with the skeleton. And at this point, mob encounters like this are starting to become routine. One word of caution though, one thing I will advise as the sun comes up outside, is to beware of ledges that mobs can drop down onto you from, because oftentimes you'll find that things like creepers will spawn up on dark ledges in caves and will drop down on you and explode before you know what's happening. So I recommend keeping an eye on those. And wait a second, I'm very, very curious about this. We've encountered a little bit of copper inside of a patch of granite. Now, sometimes this can just be a coincidence, but this can also be the sign of a rich vein of ore. Now, if we throw out some of the other stuff here, let's throw the spider eye out. For the moment, we won't need to worry about what spider eyes do exactly. We could potentially be onto a large vein of copper here, or it could end up not being anything. So I am determined to investigate this if we can. And the way I'm going to do that is by digging around inside this patch of granite to see if any more copper ore blocks are present, which unfortunately for me, it doesn't look like they are. This has led out into another flooded section of cave though, which looks quite spectacular actually. Let's get back up to the surface, and yeah, this is just an aquifer on this side of the cave. Okay. Always really interesting to see how these things generate now and to get our bearings a little bit. There are a few offshoots of the cave here that we could continue to explore, and it looks like this skeleton is going to prevent us from doing too much of that in a hurry. Assisted by some of his friends, but that's no worries. We can take out those two, no problem. There are a few more skeletons hanging back in here, and it does seem like the generation of the Lush Cave has continued back here. But that skeleton has just dropped a bow, so that might be something that's worth picking up at this stage. It's not got a great deal of durability left on it. We will craft our own. We'll go back and craft the bow at home, and I think that will probably be a more sensible thing to do. There are plenty of resources around here that we could take with us, but I think for now it's probably best to go back downriver while the sun is out and while we have a safe passage home. So I'll roam my way back down the river, passing the salmon that are swimming in the river as we go, and keeping an eye out for any more cave entrances that would be worth exploring on future resource runs in future episodes. But the cool thing is, this river actually leads back to what I've been thinking as our local lake. We can see the two lava falls there that we passed in previous episodes, and our base with the hole in the wall should be just behind this ridge of trees here. And navigating by boat is a little bit easier now that rivers are so well connected in the New World generation, so traveling by boat can actually be a really sensible thing to do, because it also saves you on hunger points. Rowing does not actually deplete your hunger at all, meaning that you can use your food a bit more effectively whenever you have to make land and run around a cave. Let's get back into our house, let's divide up all of the stuff that we've got today, and let's call it an episode there. I've started a bit of a junk drawer over here for some of my old tools, so I think we'll probably leave the shears and stuff in there. We'll start cooking the iron in one of our furnaces here. In fact, we could probably split this over two furnaces if we wanted to cook it all a little faster. We'll add the copper that we mined to our collection here, and I think we'll probably leave the bricks for a future episode. And I think maybe in the next episode we want to think about having a more permanent house set up somewhere so that we can put this stuff in storage a little more permanently. The final thing we're going to do in this episode is make ourselves a few more sticks. We'll need 4 sticks. We're just going to place those in a triangle formation, add some string down the side, and that completes our row of tools here because we now have a bow. Bows are nice and easy to use. All you got to do is hold them in your main hand or your off hand, hold down right click to draw back the bow, although you'll notice that this prevents you from blocking with a shield, and release it to fire your arrow. We can collect the arrow afterwards, and we've only got 10 arrows right now, so we'll have to use those sparingly, although in future we'll probably look at crafting more arrows and more renewable ways of getting hold of them. The fact is, ranged combat is now a possibility for us, which makes creepers a little bit less deadly and makes us a little bit better prepared. I think that is probably where we're going to leave it though. We've kind of come full circle back to the wheat field, and I really enjoyed exploring in this episode. Let me know if that's the kind of thing you'd like to see me do more of, because we could spend a couple of episodes just doing field trips and discovering what's out there in our world, or we could spend a little bit more time focused on the mechanics and stuff up front before we do more exploring and decide on a more permanent location. Let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, but for now that's going to be it from me. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care, bye for now.